I'm Megan Skidmore, and welcome to the Beyond the Shadow of Doubt. I'm a woman, daughter, sister, spouse, mother, life coach, and person of faith on a mission to normalize asking questions and allowing doubts on a faith journey and all aspects of life. Join me as I bring this traditionally taboo topic out of the shadows of shame and into the light. I firmly believe we normalize through more talking and engaging in discussion. More talking peels back, exposes, and erases the layers of shame associated with asking questions and allowing doubts. When we are more authentic about our journey, we are more powerful because shame has no power in the face of authenticity. If you come from a high demand background, it's possible you haven't taken the opportunity to thoughtfully consider your core values. Brené Brown said, living into our values means that we do more than profess our values. We practice them. We walk our talk. We are clear about what we believe and hold important, and we take care that our intentions, words, thoughts, and behaviors align with those beliefs, end quote. Before you can walk your talk, you must identify what your core values are. Identifying your core values is like thinking ahead of time. It reduces decision fatigue. It becomes your North Star, guiding you as you navigate new decisions or decisions you've come to realize that perhaps you didn't get to choose in the first place. Click the link in the show notes for my Determine Your Values guide. Take the first steps to living a values-driven and aligned life. First Friday's free coaching, a confidential group to bring all the questions, vent frustrations, share fears, express doubts. Navigating a new and uncertain reality is hard enough. Let's remove the worry of judgment from others. In this group, I will help you help yourself so that you can be there for your child, family, loved ones, and for you too. Click the link in the show notes to sign up. You must complete the agreement. Welcome, everyone, to Beyond the Shadow of Doubt. I'm Megan Skidmore, your host. I am so honored to share my guests with you today, two coaches who we have been in each other's orbits for several years now, and I love and admire them both so much. So welcome to the podcast, Coach and Kim.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. We've been excited to come and talk to you.
And I was telling them before I hit record, I'm a little nervous for this chat today, which doesn't normally happen. That tells you how much I admire and care about them. So I want to just dive right in. We have limited time. Would you both take a moment and introduce yourselves? Tell our listeners about who you are, your background, whatever you feel is helpful or pertinent to our conversation today, including, your family of origin, your faith of origin, education, career, profession, all those things.
Yeah, I'll start. I'm Kim Job. I consider myself a mom first. We have 10 kids together, and so family is really important to us. It's literally the why for everything that we do. We love our family, and they're the fuel, right? They're the reason that makes us get up and do the things that we do every day. Together, we're business strategy and story coaches. We help life coaches grow their businesses. We help them discover their unique message and have the courage to go out there and say what they are here to say. Like I said, we have 10 kids. We're a blended family. We live in Pleasant Grove, Utah. I grew up as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Grew up in Utah County, lived here my whole life. I have been in and out of activity. As a teen, I actually got put in foster care. And at that time, I actually did go to church when I was in foster care, but just through that whole teen experience of figuring out who I was and being the rebellious teen that I thought I had to be to figure myself out, I didn't go to church at points in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of been a pattern throughout my life of activity, not activity. And a lot of it was that, we'll probably get into this more, but it was all about my own internal safety and recognizing that I really had control over all of it. And I didn't think that I did. I thought it was my external circumstances creating my unsafety, but I realized it was that I was. And so that's sort of what we help our clients with, is we really help them figure out how they are getting in their own way. We work with really heart-centered coaches who have a really distinct message to share, and they know it. Right. But because they're human beings, something gets in their way. And that happens to every single one of us because we're human beings and because of our human wiring. So that's kind of a little bit of my background. But
thank you so much.
I'll try to be a little bit brief. My my background is similar but different. I was born into the church that she talked about, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Uh-huh.
And I reached a point in my life where I had to figure all of that out for myself. And so I would say for a period of my life, I did not practice any real religion, but I went to a lot of different churches. And I am originally from Southern California. I met Kim online and we met and married after, I don't know, 8, 10 months or whatever, something like that. And I just left a job I'd been at for 20 years to move to Utah. And it's been a different experience living in Utah than it was living in California. So I
Absolutely.
feel like we come with a very different view from members of the church, of that church, and yet my I know you talk a lot about doubts. My doubts, in a lot of ways, were filled in along the way. And so
Okay.
maybe that'll come out, maybe that won't come out in this, but I'm very adamant about my integrity, very, very resolute in my integrity. And so I always want to be as integral as I can. I also like want to impact others. So
Wow, such a good foundation to lay for our conversation today. Yeah, I would love to learn a little bit more specifically about maybe pivots that you experienced in your faith journeys. And you just pick one. We all probably have several, right? That's part of growth.
Yeah.
But yes, I do talk about doubts on this podcast. I'd want to normalize that faith
Yeah.
journeys are all different. They're supposed to
Yep.
be.
Yep.
There's no one single prescribed path that is perfect for every single person. I wholeheartedly believe that. And that having doubts, allowing questions is a part of a healthy faith journey, actually life journey, really. And so I would love if each of you could share a time that you can recall that you experienced a significant pivot. And that usually comes when we were at maybe a fork in the road, or a major life event occurs.
Yeah, I can remember I mean, the thing that immediately came to my mind was there was a time where I was going to church every week. And every week after church, I felt horrible. And I'm like, why am I going to church when I feel fine when I go to church? And then after church, I feel terrible. And so we made a decision at that time that I was going to stop going. I was going to stop going. And I stopped. And what I found by stopping was the foundation of what I believe, which is that I have a loving Heavenly Father. I have a loving Savior, and my connection with them is what drives all of it. It's what matters, right? It doesn't matter if it's in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or another church or no church. What matters is that I have a connection to the divine. And when I have that, that's like the fuel that keeps me and my life running. And that's what I found by stopping going to church. It wasn't in the church that I got that, right? But then when I found that, now I can go back and find what I need there. One of my favorite thoughts to think when I go on Sunday, because it's still hard for me sometimes. It's not always easy. I know I'm not like, oh, let's get up and go to church. So one of my favorite thoughts is that the Lord never turns away a willing student. And so when I go to church and I ask him, what is there for me to learn today? And I show up as a willing student, I always learn something, either from a speaker or from something someone else said, or just from watching an interaction. There's always something that I will learn if I go with an open heart, right? But instead, I was going with this closed, protected heart, thinking everyone was against me and everyone was watching me and everyone was judging me and I wasn't measuring up, right? And nobody wants to feel that way. But all of that was self-created. It was like all coming from the inside of me. It wasn't coming from anyone outside of me. So it was powerful for me to see that, to just take back my own power, but also find where my power source actually was. It wasn't in the church per se. It was in my connection with the divine, whatever the divine is for you, right?
What you bring up is so important. I don't know that it's a reason that's often considered in this equation, or maybe even recognized, but that is the mental health component, how important it is to be mindful of that, because our membership or association with any religion is at the heart, it's a relationship. And so if something is off, or like you noticed, you felt it in your body, you were not feeling good.
Yeah,
and it's so important to recognize that and honor it.
It is, and I think it's also important to be aware, to have deep listening as observers. Because, like, I would go sit in the women's meeting, Relief Society, and I would not want someone to come sit by me and say, "Oh, it's so good to see you here." I literally just wanted to go, and me being in that room was enough, like, overstimulation. I didn't need to also try to have a social conversation. You know what I mean? And I think awareness and some training and things like that are important. One of the thing that actually pushed me away of when I was having that anxiety at church was the Relief Society president at the time had started this new thing that she thought was so amazing called, for the first 1 minute, turn and talk to your neighbor. I could not do that. That was beyond my capacity. So what she thought was going to pull us all together pushed me away. You know what I mean? And I think we need to like really be aware of things like that.
I agree. Just normalize that again, what your experience, what is good for you, what resonates for you isn't necessarily all across the board. And it doesn't mean anything about you or about them. It's just different.
And it needs to be okay. But I think we also all need to recognize that our safety is ours to own.
Yeah.
Right? And often we want to give our safety away. We want to give our power away to everyone
because
else.
of what we think we're supposed to do. We're looking to external sources to validate our choices or our decisions, moves, whatever. Yeah. So good and so important. I have experienced that as well, Kim. So thank you for sharing that. What about you, Coach?
I would say the pivot in my life was, I talked about integrity is important to me. I want to do because I want to do. I also recognize in there that there's a bit of a rebel that's caught up in my soul. I tend to want to rebel. And so when I got old enough, I just decided I'm not going to be a church guy. I'm not going to do church. I don't need church in my life. I'll be fine. And then one morning, and I can't even tell you what date, I wish I'd have written it down. I wasn't journaling at that time in my life. Woke up and I literally looked went into the master bathroom and I looked in the mirror and I said out loud to myself, nobody else there, I live by myself, I don't know who you are. And I don't really like what I see. And at that time I had longer hair. I had a mullet, kind of long hair in the back, bearded, kind of a rough looking guy. And it wasn't about the look. It was about the aura. It was about the spirit. I had lost who I was in my quest to figure out who I was and where my place was, whether that was at a church or it wasn't at a church. I just knew that I had to find myself. And so I found myself going to church with friends to their churches and going to different churches where I didn't know anybody and had some really good experiences. But it kind of led me back to my origin, to where I was like, I got to figure this out, figure out why. Why is it? And who am I really? And that's when I started to find a personal relationship with my Savior. I have an interesting relationship, different than my wife. I have a different relationship with a heavenly father or a heavenly parent than I do more of a personal relationship with my Savior. And back in the day, I would have cringed if my dad used the word Lord or Savior. I would have cringed, like, ugh, I never want to be like my dad.
Okay.
And my evolution has really turned me a lot into my dad. I hear words coming out of my mouth saying, wow, that was something my dad would have said. That probably would have been cringeworthy for me. So it really was a turning point, a pivot point in my life.
That's so interesting. Thank you for sharing that. One thing I love that you both mentioned in your own way is the importance, at least in your journeys, of separating from your faith of origin for a time and the power that there was for you in that. It gave you the opportunity to intentionally choose what you believed, where you wanted to go in life, what you wanted to do with that. I think that parents especially can get really nervous, caught off guard, fearful, anxious, worried, all of those things when they see their children, their grandchildren, family members taking this. Again, remember, I mentioned I want to normalize faith journeys, and they see them taking a different path than what maybe they themselves took, because that's what was taught to them. And the expectation all along has been that that's what they need to teach their children and grandchildren to do. And because of that, they experience all those emotions. And I think they also add on to that by then taking that responsibility upon themselves. And they will often feel bad, feel guilty, they did something wrong, so on. So thank you for sharing your experiences that included, for a time, you stepped away. And I love, Coach, that you said you were keeping an open mind. You went to different churches with friends and you had really good experiences, because you felt like you had lost who you were. And it wasn't about your physical appearance. It was more about what was on the inside, your aura, your spirit. And so you went on this journey to discover for yourself what it was that was missing. And you said, whether that was in my faith of origin or not. I love that you leaving that, fill in the blank open for whatever is to come, I think is so empowering. That's part of the choosing process. That's part of the intentionally deciding for ourselves what is best for us, for our spirit, for our growth, for our progress, and also learning to trust that inner knowing.
Yeah, I think it's the concept. We talk in life coaching about the concept of emotional childhood and emotional adulthood. And this is spiritual childhood and spiritual adulthood. And I think a lot of parents are stuck in spiritual childhood and can't handle their children questioning because of it, right? They need the checklist of the black and white and the do's and the don'ts. But that is spiritual childhood. And all of us need to mature beyond that. And it has nothing to do with our age, right? It has to do with our understanding. And I think somewhat that stepping away is that space of like stepping away from the conditioning of everything that you were handed, where you were born, the religion you were given, the part of the country you live, stepping away from that and being like, who am I? Do I want all that? Do I want to pick that back up? And often we do. Often we want to pick it back up, and that's amazing. And sometimes we don't. And that is also amazing, right? What's the most important part is that we listen to ourselves. And that takes trust. Like that takes a period of growth to trust our own voice and listen to our own voice and not trust all the outside voices, right? As children, we look to our mom, to our dad, to our leaders for approval, but there's a period of crossover where we have to look inward instead. And parents get really nervous when their children start to do that, but it's a powerful stage of growth they have to go through, right?
Yeah.
So if we look at it as that, as it's actually them maturing into adulthood, I don't want to keep them stuck in childhood where they need the black and white checklist. I want them to know for themselves, choose for themselves, be who they are. And if who they are isn't who I am, that's amazing. I don't want them to be carbon copies of me. I want them to be them. So
yeah, there's so much truth to that. I have learned the more that I have released myself of those preconceived notions, those expectations that maybe were handed down to me, I'm more fully able to see what my children, and by extension, I'll include extended family members, what the potential is there to teach me and what I can learn from that. And also how that actually is meant for them in their journey, right? And that nothing's gone wrong necessarily.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Coach.
I was just going to add to that. When I think about expectation, sometimes I get uncomfortable. Like I like to have a boundary. I like people that set boundaries. I'm totally fine with that. But Kim uses the verbiage to plan at the level that it quiets your brain. And I require a little more space in my boundaries. And that would be true when you're talking about belief, relationship with deity, figuring out who you really are. Because I think oftentimes in coaching, I find people that have attached things to their identity that never really belonged in their identity. It was what they did, what stories and patterns developed to get them through those hard times or those things. And then it's just a matter of going into an acceptance of, okay, I've lived through these things. These are the patterns and the stories that I've created to get me to where I am today. But in an acceptance of that's who I've been, or that's what it seems like I've been, I'm starting to figure out that I can be whatever I want to be. And that literally can change in this moment, right now. I don't have to continue with the stories. I don't have to continue with the patterns, even though stories are hard to break and patterns are hard to break. We talk about pattern interrupts in our work. Something that will interrupt the pattern, that is the norm. That is what we're used to. And so for me, whether we're talking about religion or we're talking about human design, human performance of all types, I'm a big human performance guy. I'm an athletic coach. And I love to win, but I'm fascinated at human behavior. I can go to a theme park and just sit and watch people all day long and watch
Mhm.
their patterns and their stories become very evident to me just by watching them and listening to them. And so it's really fascinating how most of us are merely surviving our lives rather than actually living our lives. And I say that living can be as simple as starting this moment, but there are some things to overcome, and that isn't always easy.
Wow, that's so good. Most of us are surviving our lives rather than living our lives. What you're talking about segues perfectly into what I want to shift and talk about next. You're talking about this idea of progression, about maturation. We tend to think of that in terms of a physical maturation when we're talking about moving from childhood to, teen years, young adulthood, and into adulthood. But really, that occurs on many more levels than just physical, right? Our mental health, our emotional health, and our spiritual health. And so you're talking about this idea of spiritual childhood versus a spiritual adulthood, living in those stories, Coach, that you talked about, versus living outside of them, surviving versus living our lives. So I recently did a series on the 4 stages of faith as described by Brian McLaren. And for those listening that maybe haven't heard those episodes yet, I highly recommend you listen to them. It was 124, 26, and 29, and I believe 130. But basically, there are 4 stages: simplicity, complexity, perplexity, and harmony. And simplicity's focus is kind of on it's dualistic, right or wrong, good or bad. And it's also on pleasing those authority figures in your life who are teaching you these concepts: parents, teachers, mentors, maybe spiritual leaders or ecclesiastical leaders. And there's a lot of praise placed on being right, like certainty is celebrated. Complexity moves more into it, the success versus failure, right? You're looking for outside of you, kind of for those accolades for achieving your goals, being successful, and your values are more associated with being free and independent, winning, succeeding, achieving. Perplexity moves into this place of you introduce critical thinking into the mix. You are leaning, you're moving into a place where you're willing to see that maybe what you've been taught and then now what you have experienced or are continuing to experience is there's some conflict going on there. And it's bringing up perhaps a lot of cognitive dissonance, maybe a lot of discomfort. What you were told previously now doesn't answer the questions for you, right? And so you learn to be more authentic. You're learning to be more realistic and honest and acknowledging bias in life and facing inconvenient truths. And then finally, harmony is where you're willing to admit in conclusion, transcendence. You value seeking connection and finding connection and seeing things as a whole and making contribution. You also value compassion and seeking the common good, acknowledging that we're all connected, right? And doing things for the greater whole. I give that brief background because I've recently gone through your StoryCoach certification, and we were having a discussion not too long ago. And I loved the aha moment when I was sharing with you both about these 4 stages. And you're like, that is exactly correlates with the 4 levels of story.
Yeah.
And so I would love if you could take a minute and share for me and our listeners more in depth about that, about the 4 layers of story. I hope you're enjoying this episode. It's conversations like this that have been so healing for me on this journey. There was a time when voicing the thoughts of my heart was out of the question. I didn't know how to create the safety I needed to feel in order to speak vulnerably and openly. Through patience and doing my work, I have figured out the 3 pillars needed to turn the volume dial up. I learned to choose how much to share, with whom, how often, and where. I am in the driver's seat, not just in sharing my faith journey, but in any aspect of life. In my upcoming pilot hybrid group, I will teach you these 3 pillars. It's called Unlocking Your Voice. You will have the keys you need to share your heart from a grounded, safe, and confident place. It starts this fall. Find the link in the show notes. Because I love how we can see, yes, this progression exists in multiple levels of our human psyche and our human existence. And it's it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And what they are, they're essentially levels of awareness. They're levels of us wakening up, right? Of us taking off the blinders that have kept us blocked in. That's essentially what they are. So we teach 4 levels of story. They're victim, achiever, co-creator, and visionary. And I'll tell you a little bit about each one. So at victim level, you believe life is happening to me, right? It's a very childlike stage. We think that things outside us make us happy, things outside us make us sad, right? So similar on your stage, that's just where the child is looking to the adult to tell them the rules, right?
Yes.
To move from the victim level to the next level, which is achiever, you have to let go of blame, because when we're in victim mode and we think life is happening to us, we're blaming everything outside of us for what's happening. Sometimes we're also blaming us for what's happening, right? Oftentimes. So we have to let go of external blame and internal blame, and we have to add acceptance. Okay, that's a new layer, and that moves us to the next level, which is achiever, which correlates with your second level, and that's where you believe that life is happening by me. Like if it's going to happen, I have to make it happen. That's where, like, if it's going to be, it's up to me. If it's going to happen, I have to make it happen. That's what we believe.
Okay.
And that feels good when you're coming from victim mode, right? It feels good to suddenly be the achiever and go after your life. But at some point, it doesn't feel good anymore. And the reason is because you're trying to control everything. And that's not living, that's surviving. That's what he was just talking about. So to move from achiever to the next level, which is co-creator, you give up control. You give up that tight control and you add faith. You give up control.
Life is happening through you.
And that's where life is happening through me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's even beyond, like, a lot of people have adjusted their awareness and they don't believe life is happening to me, right? A lot of people believe life is happening for me. People have gotten to that level of awareness, but this is one level above that. It's not even that life is happening for me. It is literally that I am the conduit through which my life is happening. Life is happening through me. I am the vessel. I am the vehicle that all the energy that is being created in my world is happening. And when I can see that, but I let go of control, I don't have to force it to happen. I let go of control and I add faith, and that's where you become a co-creator. And that's the level where anything is possible and it's not all up to you, right? So that's the level where you start to feel freedom. There's so much freedom when you move from achiever to co-creator, because suddenly it's not all up to you. Like, you can sit back and breathe, knowing that the world is co-created. It's not all up to you. And then the next level is visionary, and that's where life is just happening as me. I am just going through my world as me. That's like 100% authenticity, where we just make a difference by being us. I like to think of Scott's very much like this. No matter where he goes, he makes a difference. People feel his energy. They feel lighter than when he was there. Then, he leaves them feeling lighter. And that's being a visionary, just going through the world as you and making a difference with your energy. You don't even necessarily have to speak, although sometimes you might. Right. And yeah, so those are the 4 levels of story that we teach. What do you want to add?
I'm always humbled when she says that, because I don't know that I agree with that. But here's what I would like to add and put some pieces together.
Okay.
When you were talking about your 4
stages of faith,
4 stages, okay?
Yeah.
It got me thinking about, we all have learned from the places that we've learned from. And in some cases, our parents, not always, but our parents and our teachers, whether that be at school, at church, whatever, have taught us what we have always considered big T truths. Their truth. That's, my dad said it. Think about a movie called The Waterboy, where he's always talking about mama says, mama says, mama says. And my question is, what does mama know? Mama said it, but what does she know? What is her knowledge? And what is the understanding of that knowledge that she has? And what makes her capable, or, if you will, worthy enough to teach her children those big T truths? Okay. Now, I'm not saying that mama doesn't know. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you go back to those stages and you go to these 4 levels of story, the same applies. For example, I could be in victim mode this minute. I'm blaming somebody. That happens to me a lot when I drive a vehicle. I get into that. I'm a victim. He or she did that to me on purpose. They purposely didn't put their blinker on and made me sit here and wait longer than I would have had to wait had they have let me know they were going to turn. I quickly slip back into that victim mode. But as soon as I give up blame, some of that times that blame is on me. Some of the times that blame is on another driver in that scenario. Then I can quickly move to achiever. I can even quickly move through achiever level and go to co-creation, where I go into that energy and that focus of creating rather than that focus of problem solving. Well, how can I make them use their blinker? Guess what? I can't make them use their blinker. So why am I worried about it? Why don't I just let it go and co-create, not problem solve, co-create what I want my next moment to be? Is that me using language that I don't normally use because I'm angry or I'm frustrated? Or do I want to create my next moment as loving and kind? My kids used to always say to me, Dad, did you know them? Who is that? I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, but you waved at him and you smiled at him. Yeah, but you don't have to know somebody to wave or smile at them. To make a difference in somebody's life, you don't know what they're going through. Maybe your smile or your wave made all the difference in the world to them. That would be more along the co-creator, because you're co-creating with a higher source, if you will, or visionary, which really is an absence of separation. What if we're all in this together? What if the energy of the universe has us all doing our thing at the same time, and what we do links in with what other people are doing and it makes an impact in somebody?
Yes, I agree. Oh my gosh, that's so powerful because that is exactly the feeling of harmony, the fourth stage.
Yes.
And I love that you were just talking about how sometimes you go back to, I don't even know if I want to say go back, but we don't just arrive at a level or a stage and then we're home free. We're just there forever.
That's the way it works.
Because
We can-
because we're humans with human equipment, and as long as we are,
Yes.
we'll fall back. Yep.
Right. And so, yeah, I remember in reading Brian McLaren's book, you can arrive to perplexity, that place that is this hellish fall when you just realize things kind of crumble and you can work through that and just acknowledge that things just aren't what you thought they were. And you get to a place where you can just accept that and live from there. And then maybe arrive to stage 4 where you can be where you're at and you can have grace and compassion for others wherever they're at. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to stay there in harmony, or in this case, in the visionary stage. But I love how you brought in this concept of energy, coach, because I have long thought that same thing too. Our energy is all connected. And I've learned from you all in our work together, energy doesn't just cease to exist. It just takes on a new form. And I really believe that's true in our faith communities.
Yeah.
As
I
well.
love I love the song Glorious by David Archuleta because it talks about each of us playing our own unique part, our
Yeah.
own unique energy. And when we do, it creates this beautiful symphony. And that's what he's talking about.
Harmonies.
My ripples affect your ripples, affect
Mhm.
his ripples, and all of them together create that harmony that you're talking about. That beautiful frequency, which is just a frequency of love. And it's love when we each open up and be who we really are, right? Be who we
Yeah.
really are. And I'm different than
Yeah.
you, and you're different than him. And we're supposed to be different because all of us together create that beautiful symphony that's like so gorgeous to listen to. But if we only listen to the tuba, it's not going to sound amazing, right? Like we each need, right? It's
So
so
funny.
powerful when we show up and be. And that's really what being a co-creator is. It's being an open conduit for your unique signature of energy to create in the world because it's needed.
Uh-huh.
Your voice is needed, and my voice is needed, and his voice is needed because they're all different. And all of them together just create this beautiful message, right? Even though we're saying similar things, our messages land on different hearts, and that's how it's meant. That's how it's meant.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing to that, and that is this. If we all started to sing and we sang the same part, it could be pretty. But then if we broke it into two parts and there was a one part harmony to the melody, that would sound cool. That would be, I want to say better. I don't know that it's always better, but I'm just saying that would be a deeper sound. It would be, and then what if we broke it in, all three of us sang different parts in harmony with one another in accordance. And that's kind of what I feel like Kim one day in one of our groups had talked about. A lot of us think that our spirits fit nice and tightly into our bodies. And she's like, I would like to suggest that your bodies actually take up some of your spirit. But if you think about somebody's aura,
Yeah.
or you walk into a room and you just feel something, maybe it's because their body can't take up all their spirit, and their spirit, or their energy, if you will, is illuminating. I always
Yeah.
say that with pregnant ladies. Pregnant ladies just have a glow.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
It's an energy.
It's life.
Yeah.
It's life.
It's
I
life.
remember that day in class where you said most people think your spirit fills up your physical body, but I say it's our physical body that is inside of our spirits, because our spirit extends beyond that. That really resonated with me. This idea of our aura, our energy, love being a huge element of that energy, that
Yeah.
aura is so beautiful. All these concepts just fill me up. I love it so, so much.
I also want to add one more thing, Megan. I don't want to take over your podcast.
No, you're
I
not.
want to add one more
Add.
thing. If you've ever been in a room or in a setting where people are speaking different languages, have you ever noticed you may not know what they're saying, but you can feel the power of whatever it is that they're saying? And sometimes some people would say that might be the gift of tongues. I don't know if that's true or not. What I do know is the power of the energy and vibration of somebody's love, which is a higher vibration energy, can be felt. Maybe not understood in a mind way, but if your conduit is open between your heart and your mind, you can understand and feel that love, that vibration in your heart, and it could send a message of what they're saying to your mind.
Mm, I love that. So much to think about and consider in this topic. We could talk for hours. I do want to ask what your thoughts would be on this. We've been talking about these different stages and how they relate to life, and specifically to this podcast, to a faith journey, and this idea that we're progressing, and that it's not linear, right? Sometimes it's progressing from one stage or level to the next, maybe going back. And by going back, I don't want to insinuate that it's
Yeah.
regression or digression. It's part of this nonlinear progress, right? So that said, what advice, suggestions? I mean, you all have, between the two of you, quite a fair amount of kids and grandkids. So for the parents that are listening, or caregivers, and that can even be, those that are friends of somebody who's struggling, or not necessarily a parent or grandparent, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
What advice or direction would you offer as it relates to these levels, these stages, and how that can help that
Yeah.
caregiver in navigating? Yeah.
Likely, if you have a child that's questioning, you are at the achiever level thinking, I have to help them see. I have to make them follow the rules. I have to make them come to church. I have to. You think if it's going to be, I have to make them see, right? But that's not true. You have to move to the co-creator level and remember that, first of all, it's never been up to you to make them see. They're an individual human being with the right to see, look at whatever they want to see, but also that it's not up to you to make them become anything, right? They also have a co-creator who is part of this equation, part of this game. And so what you have to let go of to move from that achiever level, if I have to make them see, to co-creator, you have to let go of control. And that's just softening and letting them be. We have 10 kids together, so we often get asked, what's your number one piece of parenting advice? And it's don't make little things into big things. And I think parents do that. Even when kids are questioning the church, like they make it such a big thing and they have to figure it out and they have to make their child see that they don't. Like literally, it's not a big deal. In fact, it's actually a sign that your children are progressing from childhood to adulthood. So if
Yes.
anything, celebrate it with them. If anything, maybe open up a space of conversation and see, I love that you are questioning. You know what that shows me? That shows me that you're maturing. That shows me that you're stepping from a child into an adult. And I would love to be a safe space for you to question anything. In fact, I've had my own questions. Here's what I've questioned. Here's
Mhm.
what I've questioned. It's totally safe to question and reassure them that you are the place that they come to with questions, right? Not because you have the answers, because you don't have their answers, right? But because you are willing to help them look inside
Yeah.
and find their own answers, right? Because from there, they will create their own relationship with the divine, whatever the divine is. And then you won't have to be in control of it anymore because you were never in control of it in the first place. You just thought,
That's so true.
right? You just thought you were. And
That's
so
such a key point. They are
it's
co-creators
yep, they are co-creators
in and of
Of
themselves.
their own.
of their own, creating their own with
Yeah.
a divine co-create. I like to think I have a whole team of co-creators. I have a divine team that is co-creating with me, and so do they. Every single one of my kids, right? And I like to think maybe I'm part of that divine team for them, right? But I'm not the say. I just want to be a loving part of their team. I want them to want me at their table of directors. We do an exercise called your table of directors where you get to decide who has a say in your life. I want my kids to want me at their table of directors, right? And they're not going to want me if I have such tight control on everything that they do. But if I soften and I give them sovereignty over who they are, they want me at their table of directors, right? Because I have
Phenomenal.
a loving voice of reason.
Such a
Can I
phenomenal
just use
concept.
one example? I know we're just about out of time.
No, go ahead. Let's hear it.
I have a couple of boys. We have a couple of boys, but they came in, my four boys, into our 10. So four of those are boys and they're mine that came with me. But I have at least two of those that have gone through a stage of atheism. So they don't believe in God that
Yeah.
even exists, or agnostic. I don't really care if he does or he doesn't, or she does or she doesn't. I don't care about that. It doesn't really matter in my life. And they came and we spoke about that. And rather than me lay down the law and say, this is the way it is, fellas, I opened up the possibility that they could learn and figure it out on their own.
Mhm.
But I did leave them with a warning. That day that we spoke, I left them with a warning. Be very careful what you say. Don't be resolute in the stage that you're in right now, because I can tell you, you may be humbled or a little embarrassed by this stage that you're in right now. And I left it at that, because there are things that I believe to be true and there are things that I know to be true. So I let it go. One of those boys recently told me about an experience that he'd had that was overwhelming proof in his mind that God indeed does exist. Now, his God may be just a tiny bit different than my understanding of my God,
Mhm.
but I believe it's the same God. And I believe that experience is part of his journey.
Mhm.
And I believe this existence, that the earth that we live on today, is a temporary one. It is a place to learn and grow. And I watched his evolution. This is my oldest boy. I watched his evolution with pride and a really neat feeling or energy that came over me, because I didn't try to force him to believe my way. I
Mhm.
allowed space for him to figure it out himself. Now, is he a finished product? No, but neither am I. I'm still evolving day to day. I'm still learning and growing.
I think we tend to forget that. That's such an
Yes,
important point. Yeah.
yes, yes. So I think that illustrated what I think Kim was talking about,
For
in that
sure.
if we leave a space for them, no different than I'm okay with boundaries. I'm okay with the box, but it has to be a big box because I have to have plenty of space to allow energy and allow my co-creator, if you will,
Right.
get involved in that space.
Well, in that box with those boundaries, I think that goes back to learning what to create a space that is safe for us and learning,
That's correct.
Yeah.
right? Connecting with what we are okay with, what we're not okay with, and doing stretching ourselves out a little bit outside of that box when we're ready. And we're the only ones who can have tabs on that. What's fascinating to me here, what you're talking about, opening it up for them to figure it on their own and letting go requires faith. And that is on the part of the parent or the caregiver. That has nothing to do really with the individual, right?
Correct.
That is our job. Our role is to really embody that faith, and that growth is for us or the
Yeah.
parent, the caregiver.
Yeah. I
Right?
mean, sometimes on the part of the person too, like if they're so on achiever level that I have to figure this out and I have to do the research and I have to study the things. Can you feel the survival in that? That's not
Yes,
that survival. And
that's
so you
survival.
have to like really pay attention to the energy driving your actions as a parent, but also as the child, right? Like,
Mhm.
why do I feel such a need? Even the child has to at some point let go of control and stop
Yeah.
trying to prove it to the parents and stop trying, just like let go of control and be in their life. And when they can be in their life, they will also hear their real answers, right? They're so
Yes.
busy trying to prove something that they can't even hear what's true for them yet. But if they can stop trying to prove,
Yes.
stop trying to control everyone's perception, and just be, they will be able to quiet enough in their own body and being to hear the truth for themselves. And then they'll have and then if your parents do it right, and like are a safe but brave space,
Yeah.
then you can grow with them, right? It just creates
Mhm.
it's literally like you create the pot that your children are the plant that they are growing, and they need a bigger pot when they're a teen than
Mhm.
they needed when they were a child to have space to flourish and grow and figure out who they are. And that's exactly what we want them to do. But when they start doing that, we get nervous.
Yeah.
That's just our own thing to solve and deal with. And it has nothing to do with the child. That has
Yeah.
to do with our own patterns, right?
Maybe
Our
that
own
means it's time for us to
look
move
inside.
into the next biggest pot.
Yep, totally. Yep. That's what it is.
So good. Amazing, amazing insight. So I always like to ask one last question to all my guests. And what is that? And that question is, what does it mean to you to live beyond the shadow of doubt?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it means to live at the co-creator level. I have given up
Mm,
control and that tight, just like surviving in my life of having to manage everything, and I have added faith. So I've let go of control and I've added faith. That's what it means. And like I don't know what will happen, but I know that it's not always up to me, and I know that I'm always supported through every step of it. That's what it would mean to me.
love that.
I it's interesting the visual that I got when you asked the question. I'm never really one that likes to be cornered. I don't feel like the question cornered me whatsoever. But the vision that I got was that the shadow of doubt is lesser and not as prominent when the light is brighter
Mm,
and it comes from above. Because then the only shadow would be at my feet. That would be the only shadow. And most people wouldn't even see that shadow. But
mhm,
when the light is bright, and so it takes me back to this. If I think about the concept of, and we've all heard it, I think, you can hate the sin, but not the sinner. You can dislike the act or the mistake or whatever you want to call it, but you still love. For you, does that fit more into the co-creator mode, or does that fit into the visionary mode?
mhm,
Because for me, when I look at my kids, I love them no matter what they do.
mhm,
Sometimes I don't like what they do or say, or watching our kids parent their kids.
mhm.
And by the way, for the record, grandparenting is awesome, but it can be a little nerve-wracking when you watch
Yeah.
parenting skills or their where they are in their parenting goes back to when I first started parenting, and that scares me a little bit because I learned a lot of hard lessons. And thanks to my kids for staying with me because I was a bit of a harsh dad, but that's what I grew up with.
Mhm.
I had to evolve out of that.
So thought-provoking, all of this. Thank you so, so much for imparting your experience, your wisdom, your insight. I'm so excited for this episode to publish. So just a few more questions that I'm looking for one word, two word answers. That's it. This is for our listeners to get to know you a little more personally. So I'm just going to throw some questions out. Tell us your favorite book, even if it's just the one that you're reading right now.
John Fitzgerald, The Great Brain. Everybody's going to laugh about that, and most people won't know what it is. Go look it up. The Great Brain by John Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
Okay.
This isn't my favorite book, but it is one that was a catalyst for change for me, and it's Personality Isn't Permanent by Dr. Brendon McCarty.
Perfect. Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Very introverted.
Extrovert.
I knew it. Oh, yeah. Okay. And who's your favorite artist?
Like music artist?
You pick.
Oh,
You pick whatever.
Ooh.
That's a good question. I don't know if I have a favorite.
That's okay too. Just all of them.
Yeah, we have two playlists. We have one that's called Kim's Soul Music, which is pretty much Christian pop kind of. And then we have one called Friday Feelings, and it's mostly country. And we love like just the fun feeling of country that let your hair down, just like enjoy your life, be with each other, build your relationship, that kind of feeling.
So whether you're talking about art,
Yeah.
like on a page
Yeah.
or a painting, or you're talking about music, it always has to do with harmony for me. When the colors splash and all together, they're just beautiful.
Mm.
When the harmonies of a song, doesn't matter whether it's country or rock, or it doesn't matter what genre it is. When the harmonies make each one a little bit sweeter, they make each other's a little bit sweeter, a little bit tighter. That's sweet to my soul.
Mm, beautiful. And I know you like pink because you often open our class
Yes.
sessions with pink.
I do love pink.
Okay. Are you a night owl or a morning lark?
I'm a morning lark.
And I'm a night owl.
Yes.
You guys are awesome. Celebrity crushes. Who are your celebrity crushes?
I think Nick on The Young and the Restless is pretty.
That's
Pretty
Joshua
bad.
Morrow. if
Joshua
you
Morrow, yeah.
Don't know.
I'm like, I don't know what's his name.
That's funny that Coach knows the name.
I've been watching Young and the Restless forever. Celebrity crush. I know what she would say, and I don't think that's true. I can't even think of her name now. I would say probably an athlete,
Okay.
and there's probably a plethora. There's a list of athletes that would be.
Great. We're not watching sports anymore.
Most of them are men.
Oh,
That's funny.
I guess that's
Okay.
a different kind of crush.
yeah. Different kind of crush.
It works. And do you do still or carbonated water, or are you diet soda fans?
I am literally not a water snob. I'll drink water out of our bathroom tap.
I'm a water
It's
snob.
a snob.
And I'm a Coke Zero guy, and I used to be a Diet Pepsi guy, so now I'm a Coke Zero guy.
That's awesome. And then finally, the furthest place that you have traveled.
Probably the Dominican Republic. How far away is that together? We've been to the
Yeah,
Dominican.
probably the Dominican, yeah.
Pretty far. Over the ocean tends to be pretty far.
I'm like, I don't know. It was somewhere far away. It took a long time.
Never Europe, though.
Yeah.
Yet.
Yeah.
Yet.
Well, you two, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. It has been amazing and I've loved it. And I know our listeners will too. So thank you so very much for making time and being here with me and our
Well,
listeners.
thanks
You're
for the
welcome.
invite. We've
Thanks,
had a good
Megan.
time.
Absolutely. Beyond the Shadow of Doubt podcast is a proud member of the Dialogue Podcast Network, which is part of the Dialogue Journal found at dialoguejournal.com. Founder Eugene England was a Mormon writer, teacher, and scholar who wrote, "My faith encourages my curiosity and awe. It thrusts me out into relationship with all creation and encourages me to enter into dialogue. My hope is that this podcast is an extension of that vision." Hopeful Spaces is a Dallas Hope Charities component of Hopeful Discussions, sponsored by Mercedes-Benz Financial Services USA. It's a free monthly parent, ally, or caregiver support group facilitated by Megan Skidmore Coaching. Email chc@dallashopecharities.org for more info. Visit meganskidmorecoaching.com to find this podcast and additional free resources, including the link for a complimentary coaching session. Follow me on Facebook or Instagram for more or to send me a DM. Help the podcast grow. Please follow, review, and share with a friend.